Hello, my name is Crystal Wilson, and I am a teacher in Sumner County. My school is actually placed in Wellington, Kansas, but we serve several districts throughout Sumner County. We are a behavioral day school program or a J setting, and we would house kids who have been removed from their home districts due to severe behavior. And that would be any student that is on an IEP is who we would accept here. So we typically would call ourselves kind of like a revolving door. We could have students start any day of the week. We usually have very minimal notice. Sometimes it's a kind of a process of getting here, lots of plans put in place before they arrive here. But we do have students that we are notified and they start 2 days later, and they could be gone just as quick. We do have protocols in place that they have to reach a certain criteria before they're able to look at going back or transitioning back to their home schools. But that gets rather lengthy to explain. Basically, we would be like a one-room schoolhouse. And so we have 4 classrooms total in this building. We have a structured learning program. We have elementary, which is my classroom. We have a middle school and a high school. Elementary, I house right now K through fourth grade right now is what I have, and it can fluctuate very easily, but I've had no less than 9 students on my caseload this year, and I am allotted to have 3 paras, but I only currently have 2 full-time, so it can be rather rough most days, I would say. Um, One thing that I really wanted to observe and to see in other classrooms were behavior management, classroom management, that type of thing, to kind of just see what other classroom teachers are doing within their room, to kind of see what all goes into their plans day to day. And so I did observe, which we don't ever get that chance within this building, to observe the other classrooms and the other teachers. So I was able to observe in other rooms, the middle school room in particular, and she has a pretty hefty caseload as well. Once again, strictly behavioral students, and so it's hard to get through any given lesson, and it's usually broken into many different groups because we have all different age gaps and learning levels, which is rather difficult to meet when you have to implement several, well, all core academics for each age group that you serve. So it was interesting to see how she broke it apart and how she was able to reach each student regarding each of those academics core subjects. Um, I really enjoyed watching her interact with the students and how her peers would also run small groups and meet with the other students while she was teaching a small group herself. Um, Elementary, as far as that goes, it's always interesting to see how that goes within the buildings. And so, some reg ed classrooms or even different special education classrooms have completely different caseloads and different population within those rooms. So I always find it interesting to sit within those rooms. I actually recently observed another small town school, their program down there, and I was able to see the teacher interact with these students. And one in particular was a student that was on radar, is what we would say, of coming to our day school. So I was able to sit in that classroom and watch her interact with this student who was already severely behavioral in the classroom, and they were trying to put protocols into place to keep him in his district. Unfortunately, it's still a whole process that they're going to have to go through, but they're not proving it to be successful yet. So there is a good chance that he would end up in our building come August. I did enjoy seeing like the different rewards and incentives that she had in place. She also used a token economy system, so each student could earn a token. But what I thought was unique versus other classrooms was her token was given, each student had their own plan, why they were working for those tokens. And the paras and herself were very aware of what that student needed to be doing in order to earn that. So it's a lot of memorizing each student and what they're working towards. But the students were very quick to remind her as well, which was fascinating to see work in a reg ed classroom with sped students. And she had, I think that day in particular, she had 17 kids in person, which is a very large classroom compared to what we're used to around here. So it was nice to be able to observe that. A few things that we had done or that I had noticed or took note of was how the paras were scheduled throughout the day and the plans that they were given each day, which is not something that we typically do in my classroom. We do have a plan that we follow each day, and each student gets all of the core subjects, and then we try to do a little bit of like lab time or enrichment time with each of them. But we usually just follow what we ended with the following day, and then we keep trying to progress through that curriculum. But there is a lot of times that we have to circle back because of behaviors. We miss a lot of that core time with each of the students, and sometimes it's that particular student's fault, and sometimes it would be a peer in the classroom that was disruptive, and so we have to circle back around, which poses a lot of reteaching, which is okay, but it is a lot to take in. There are several different forms of behavior that we see within this building. Um, but one thing that I was not completely familiar with was the transition plans. I have never written a transition plan. I've never been part of a meeting that held anything to do with the transition plan. So to observe in a classroom and to go through that process with another teacher, with a student that was actually looking at transitioning or the transition plan for after high school was very unique experience. And I actually learned and gathered a lot from it. Um, Working with this particular student and going through questionnaires and everything with him, I learned a lot about him as a person, and I actually felt that he opened up a little bit more because it was all about him. It was about what he wanted for himself, and I don't know that he gets or he feels comfortable talking about himself as much as he did with me. And after sat down with the teacher and went through everything that we had discussed, him and I actually got a lot more information from him than she did previously. So that was, I think, a good thing. Maybe somebody fresh enticed him to talk about himself a little bit more. I was able to gather a lot of information of what goes into a transition plan and the things that you need to start looking for or start encouraging for each of those students in order to get them to where they need to be successful in the future. And some kids, or for all kids, it'll look very different what their plans will be. Um, and that is something to keep in mind. It's not always something that you need to do when in regards of pushing college to each student because college isn't in the cards for everybody. You should really encourage an end result, whether it be a trade school, college, workforce. It's very important to encourage a future plan, I understand, but not necessarily push just college. And so that was something that was brought up on several occasions between the teacher and I when we sat down to talk because a lot of the forms that you see talk about college, 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 college. Um, with the population within my building, we don't necessarily see college in everybody's future. We hope that there is further education for each of them in their futures, but it is not something that all of them want to do or feel capable of doing. And so we need to look at other avenues, which was something new to me, especially working with littles forever now, 10 plus years. It is something that we need to feel confident talking about trade schools and other avenues rather than just college because obviously everybody's situation is going to be different and unique. So I did take away a lot from the transition plan and the needs of behavioral students that go into those transition plans because those are going to be a lot different than your normal transition plan. Um, so overall, I feel like it gives me a new outlook on what to expect and things to watch for and maybe even document, get a game plan together for these kids that they're never too young to start talking about futures. So that is something I will plan differently from here on out.